Introduce a distinguished guest who has long stands for freedom, security, and human dignity, Ambassador Carla Sands. Ambassador Sands served as the United States Ambassador to the Kingdom of Denmark, where she advanced American leadership and values in Europe and beyond. She is a vocal supporter of liberty, a strong national security, and a principled U.S. foreign policy. Today, she stands with the Iranian people in their fight against tyranny and in support of a free, secular, and democratic and non-nuclear Iran. Now, please join me in welcoming her.
Thank you. Thank you for that kind introduction. I just want us all to look around at all those beautiful faces on those placards. It goes almost as far as the eye can see. I want us to look at those faces, those beautiful young faces. Those are heroes. Those are Iranian patriots. They were all standing up for freedom. They were standing with the National Council of Resistance of Iran. And this exhibition that I've just walked through, it honors 60 years of Iran's leading pro-democracy movement, the MEK, resisting both the Shah's dictatorship and the current theocracy. These faces, these beautiful faces of the fallen, embody both the foundation and the promise of a free, non-nuclear, secular republic in Iran, and one that is within reach. The pictures on display today demonstrate the very high price paid to create a culture and make a guiding example for the new generations that you just heard from, the millennials, the Gen Z, the now Gen Alpha. And it's a clear testimony and guarantee that Iran will be freed by those who continue this path of risking their lives every day to confront the IRGC. The exhibit today shows why the MEK's resistance units have been expanding. They're embedded in the social fabric. They're difficult for the regime to eliminate. They're deeply integrated within the general population and society at large. And the resistance units are expanding their presence throughout Iran. They actively challenge the regime's strongholds of oppression and terror. And their primary goal is to dismantle the atmosphere of fear and repression, highlighting the regime's vulnerabilities and opening the way for the people's uprising. Despite Tehran's relentless attempts to suppress dissent, the resistance units continue their mission, significantly influencing Iranians' landscape. I want to thank you all for your patience for the last 40 years. You know, I was a young woman when I saw the takeover by the mullahs after the fall of the Shah. I saw the American hostages, and then I saw them released when President Ronald Reagan was sworn into office as a young woman. The mullahs have brought religious fascism to Iran. They've exported terror around the world. They've funded and groomed the Houthis, Hamas, Hezbollah, and the terror units within Iran itself. I want to thank Maryam Rajavi and the National Council of Resistance of Iran, the NCRI, for inviting me to speak with you today. Your movement is growing and it's gaining momentum. And regarding the great people of Iran, the global community must end this era of concessions and appeasement. No more patient waiting for this regime to moderate. The Iranian people are asking the world to side with them. The global community must give a full-throated support for a free, democratically elected, secular republic in Iran. And this means that the people reject rules by mullahs and monarchs and dictators. This means an end to abusive government that doesn't serve the people. The documented abuses of the women of Iran and the execution of so many thousands of Iranian patriots by the regime are an affront to civilization. Over the years, we've seen the cold-blooded killing of protesters in the streets of Iran. And we stayed silent while we watched them bleed in the streets, and we failed to support the people. In 2022, the world watched while the brutal regime killed beautiful Mahsa Amini while she was in custody of the morality police for not properly wearing her hijab and covering her hair. You know, a beautiful opera was created in her memory, and I watched that opera. And the Iranian people were protesting, and we watched around the world. But the world did not support them. We stayed silent. In fact, the Biden administration scolded the people of Iran for fighting for their freedom. The inhumane acts, including arbitrary arrests and detention because of the forced mandatory hijab and the gender segregation, have been widely and persistently employed by the Iranian authorities in response against discrimination of women. And these incidents have often involved excessive force, humiliation, intimidation, both verbal and physical abuse, alongside of fines. And the Iranians' authorities' treatment of women detained for the improper hijab has included torture, such as rape and other sexual abuse, sometimes resulting in fatalities. The violence against women for resisting the mandatory hijab and gender segregation has inflicted terrible, serious injury on women, both mental and physical. Tens of thousands of patriots and more have been jailed for fighting for freedom and refusing to kowtow to this ruthless regime. Thousands of movement supporters have been killed in Iran, and I'm asking, will you support the people of Iran? I'm talking to the global leaders all across the world who stand for democracy. The current Iranian regime poses a danger to the world and to the region. The deadly rhetoric by the mullahs and their proxies must be taken seriously. What do they say? Death to Israel, death to America, death to the MEK. For 23 years, the Iranian regime has lied about their nuclear program. This program is against the wishes of the Iranian people. Even though the Iran regime has spent about $1 trillion on nuclear development, only 2% of Iran's energy comes from nuclear. Meanwhile, in spite of having abundant oil and gas, some of the biggest oil and gas fields in the world, the regime has only invested minor amounts in oil and gas. In fact, they even lack refineries. Very little infrastructure. And although the regime has claimed it wants to negotiate with the Trump administration, the Supreme Leader has declared that their nuclear program is a red line. Now he's in hiding. And President Trump and Secretary of State Marco Rubio have been crystal clear. There must be zero nuclear enrichment. And to that end, the President has provided the Iranian regime with a diplomatic pathway to dismantle its program. President Trump has repeatedly stated that his preference is for a peaceful agreement between the U.S. and Iran, but he's left the military option on the table. We're now days into the 2 weeks that the president has given the mullahs to agree to denuclearize. You know, soon after President Trump returned to office, he issued a national security memorandum. He reinstated the maximum pressure campaign on Iran. And since then, we've seen additional sanctions, most notably secondary sanctions, against Iran and those who purchase Iranian oil. It's announced almost weekly new sanctions. In contrast, the Biden administration refused to enforce the sanctions and most significantly allowed oil sales to China, which enriched the regime by about $90 billion over 4 years. That's a lot of money, and that's on top of what the Biden administration paid for the lives of a few American hostages, billions to the regime, enriching their terror and their proxies. When Maryam Rajavi, when she addressed the United States Congressional Caucus on Human Rights, she did not ask for American boots on the ground. She did not ask for money. She simply asked that the United States recognize the right of Iranians to determine their own destiny. They want a secular, non-nuclear republic. The NCRI is on the right side of history. Maryam Rajavi and the NCRI have created a brilliant 10-point plan. It's aimed at establishing an elected government that serves all the Iranian people, not a few corrupt elite. They and their plan reject clerical rule and empower the people to determine their own fate. They stand for freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of the press and internet. They call for dismantling of the IRGC and the Quds Force. They affirm a commitment to individual and social freedoms and rights in accordance with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. They demand an end to censorship and justice for political prisoners. They call for separation between religion and state and for freedom of religion. They demand full gender equality across society and an end to all forms of discrimination. The right to choose one's own clothing, equality in marriage and divorce, equality in education and employment opportunities, including in politics. They advocate for an independent judiciary anchored in international standards based on the presumption of innocence, the right to counsel, the right of appeal, and the right to be tried in a court by an independent judge. They call for the abolition of Sharia law, for fair treatment of ethnic minorities, and autonomy of Iranian Kurdistan. They promote environmental protection and rejuvenation of the environment, and a non-nuclear Iran devoid of weapons of mass destruction, rooted in international and regional cooperation for peaceful coexistence. The movement is committed to free and fair elections, no appeasement, no war. The NCRI is offering a third way forward for Iran, rejecting appeasement and war. They're calling for change by the people of Iran through organized resistance. They're not asking for boots on the ground or financial aid. They believe that regime change is the task of the Iranian people. They will determine their own destiny. With their brilliant 10-point plan, Maryam Rajavi as president-elect and the NCRI can lead to a great rebirth of Iran, a new Iran that rejoins the community of nations, where young, educated Iranian patriots can proudly take their place, their rightful place in the world. Now is the time for the people of Iran to act. We must not wait. Thank you.